all for being here. I have to tell you, though, y'all have raised my blood pressure today. Everybody's saying that this is the problem and that's the problem. And the bottom line is we have our working group, as the chairman said, which is going to be this subcommittee. I believe y'all need a working group, because if you all don't solve this, we're going to come in and come up with an answer. And it may not be an answer that you'll end up liking. Now, one of the things I've heard today that I do like is transparency. And I understand Mr. Mitchell needs the manufacturers of the drugs, biologicals, whatever. Mr. Mitchell needs, as a consumer patient advocate, needs the insurance companies out there. We all need that. We need our doctors. We appreciate that. Love my pharmacists. As you all know, I really think they're frontline folks for healthcare, and most people, at least in districts like mine that are mostly rural, they've known their pharmacists for years. They trust their pharmacists. They want their pharmacist's input, and we appreciate that. But here's a question. Without transparency, Mr. Merritt, I can't figure out for the life of me why the insurance companies can't deal directly with the manufacturers and the pharmacists, and what value is it that you're adding? Because what we've got is we've got a big black box, and we dump the drugs in, we got all this, we got people pointing fingers, and I'm not going to ask you, because that's the question we're going to have to answer another day. I only have 3.5 minutes left. That'll take hours. But what I'm seeing and what the public sees is we got this big black box called a PBM. They're saying they have to raise their prices so they can then give you a bigger discount. And sometimes Mr. Isles and the insurance companies like that, and sometimes you like it, and sometimes you get rebates back, and sometimes you take money from the pharmacists back after they've already filled the prescription, or the insurance company does, but it all comes back. For the life of me, if we don't get some transparency in there, and there must be something you're adding to the system, and I look forward to you telling me after the meeting in a written form what that is, but I think we have to have some transparency so the average citizen in the United States understands why it is that y'all are up here pointing fingers at one another, and it comes back in big part to what's going on inside that big black box called the PBMs. Now, that being said, on the clawback, as I call it, or DIR fees, as you know, Mr. Hoey, I have a bill in along with my friend, Mr. Congressman Welch, and we've introduced a bipartisan bill that would put an end to this retroactive collection fees from pharmacies. And it's interesting because we heard Mr. Merritt earlier say that's an outlier. But when I hear from pharmacists in Pennington Gap and in Pulaski and in Salem and in all the small towns in my rural district with 29 jurisdictions that they're having a problem with this, I think it must be the big boys, and all of my small pharmacies are the outliers who are getting hit by this. Has that been your experience?
The DIR fees are prevalent across every pharmacy that we know of that does business with Medicare Part D, which is every pharmacy. So DIR is
not an outlier from your perspective.
No, the consumer copay clawbacks, I would not call them an outlier. Those are really one PBM that's doing the most damage there. But DIRs is across the board. It's suffocating independent pharmacies, and it leads to some of the consequences that the Congresswoman from California alluded to.
And you know, it's interesting because they apparently do this analysis on Part D. I've been reading through the CMS rule analysis. And at one point they say, our analysis of Part D plan payment and cost data indicates that in recent years, DIR amounts Part D sponsors, that'd be the insurance companies, and their PBMs actually received have consistently exceeded bid projected amounts. And in another part of that analysis, it says that means it goes to their profit line. Mr. Mitchell and the consumers out there aren't seeing all that, and those savings, that's going to profit. Does that happen a lot, Mr. Hoey?
Oh, absolutely. So the DIR fees, I think the CMS analysis from January showed that DIR fee, over $80 billion have been paid in DIR fees over the last 6 years. And so where those DIR fees are going, some of them may be going to lower premiums, maybe.
And I suspect some of them are going to lower premiums.
But some of it may not be going to that.
But here's a problem that the American public sees, and if I've heard about it, I know others have, and others may ask questions about it as well, and that is I've heard stories, and they're, you know, anecdotal, and people don't want me to use their names and so forth, where they've gone to their pharmacist, the pharmacist has told them this is how much it's going to cost, and as I think it was Mr. Mitchell testified, people are cutting their drugs in half or not taking all their doses they're supposed to, and the pharmacist will say, well, you know, if you pay cash and don't use your insurance, you can actually get it cheaper. Because of all the finger pointing going on down on this end of the table as to who's made the prices go up, you're actually better off to deal outside the system and just buy it for cash. Have you found that to be true?
That is correct in some cases, and the pharmacies that do that are taking their business life in their own hands.
I understand that. That's why I can't talk about it.
Yes, sir.
Can't talk about it much. So here's the bottom line, folks. If that doesn't say that there's something stinking in Denmark, nothing else does. We're going to have to work on it, and that's why you see Democrats and Republicans upset today. I yield back.